Hello and welcome to episode 42 of the Peterpodcast. I'm your host, reporter Taylor Clydesdale. With me this week is Kemi Akapo. Kemi is running for council in Town Ward, and today we're going to be talking about the ways that Peterborough is designed.
I was canvassing and the streets didn't have sidewalks. So I was walking on the road and there's cars going by me. So I was concerned for my safety and the safety of my volunteers. And I was like, streets need sidewalks. And I'm a pretty able-bodied person and pretty healthy. But I was thinking, if I was in a walker, if I was in a wheelchair, if I was a mom, pushing my baby around in a stroller, this would be pretty dangerous and pretty scary.
And we're also going to be talking about cycling infrastructure, and we're also going to be talking a bit about housing. So hope you enjoy the show.
So my name is Kemi Akapo, and I am running for City Council in Town Ward. I've lived in Peterborough for over 13 years. I came here as a teenager and I went to Trent University. After graduating from Trent University with my Bachelor's of Honors in Arts, I worked at Trent for a couple of years, and now I work at the New Canadian Centre, a centre that works with immigrants and refugees. And among my work stuff, I also volunteer in the community. I've taken a bit of a step back in volunteering just to focus on the campaign. But previously I was on the YWCA, the Kawartha World Issue Center, the Warming Room, and I still volunteer at the Warming Room and at One Roof. So different organizations like that. Oh, and the Peterborough Independent Podcasters. I was on their inaugural board, so I'm quite pleased about that.
Sounds like you don't have a lot of spare time once you're done with all that.
No, I don't. But somehow I managed to still attend council meetings, and still have dinner with friends and visit family. So I make it work.
Yes, and back when I used to sit in council chambers a bit more regularly, we were certainly a face that I would see often in council chambers. You and Kim Zippel and a couple of others. So maybe you can explain a little bit about why you've decided to run for council.
Certainly, yeah. So I decided to run about a year ago, and my reason, I have many reasons for why I wanted to run. First, it's always been instilled in me, my parents instilled in me this, that if you live in a community, it's your responsibility to give back to the community. You can't just be a passive member of the community. So growing up, I always volunteered in my community. And then I moved to Peterborough, got involved at Trent. I was on the student council at Trent. After I graduated, I sort of expanded my views beyond Trent University and started focusing more on Peterborough. And then my eyes turned towards City Council. And just through my years of being involved in the community and learning more about it, I see that Peterborough is a wonderful place. I really love it here. But there are certain things that I think that the city can do to help progress it and move it forward. And based on my knowledge of the city, I thought that I could be a good representative for the Town Ward residents. I feel like I will bring a different voice to the table that isn't there right now.
So what are some of the things that the city can do to start moving things forward that aren't moving forward already?
So I think for one, the city council needs to have a little bit more of a progressive view. The people that I'm talking to tend to see city council as a little bit thinking old school and needs to start thinking forward and thinking not so much just like in the next 1 or 2 years, but thinking what's the impact of our decisions going to have in the next 10, 20, 40 years. That's mainly what I'm talking about. Just a little bit more progressive views.
Can you think of any examples in the ways that city council is kind of old school thinking, and how, if you're elected to council, what's some kind of new school thinking that you would bring to the table?
Sure. I think one example would be the casino, which is like a hot button issue. But for the casino was built on a wetland, essentially the area that it's built on. And more progressive people are thinking, well, if we're thinking about being environmentally forward, we shouldn't be building things on wetlands. And I hear the argument for the casino might bring jobs, But what kind of jobs are they? Are they going to be good paying jobs? Will they be the kinds of jobs that give people dignity for the work that they do? Will they help people pay their rent? And also, the effect that it might have on the community. Peterborough is a city that has a large population of seniors, as well as people on lower income. So I'm concerned that if these folks start going to casinos and start perhaps spending their money and getting addicted to that, what services do we have available in Peterborough to help them? So that's the kind of thing I'm thinking about.
Okay, so if that's an example of some old school thinking, what's some more progressive thinking, especially in the lines of if the casino is here to bring jobs, what's a job making opportunity that's a bit more progressive that you would like to see in the city?
Well, I think the environmental sector is growing in Peterborough. Well, maybe not so much in Peterborough, but definitely in Peterborough, but also across Ontario and Canada. So if we were able to attract jobs in Peterborough that were in the environmental sector, I think that would be great. Climate change is real, and it's happening. So what can we as a city do to address that? And if we can address that by attracting jobs in the city, I think that would be great.
And this council has passed something that's along those lines, because they are passing the Clean Tech Commons,
yes.
The new green technology business park that's going to be happening at Trent.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, to be honest, I don't know too much about it, so I don't want to say I'm for or against it, but in theory, the idea sounds good to me, and I like the idea of clean tech, but I don't know where. I know that the plans are to build it on Trent, but I'm not exactly sure where the location of that is and what sort of environmental impact that will have. So it's one thing to bring in clean tech commons, but if you're going to do it by displacing wildlife nature, then what's like? Do you do what's that? Oh gosh, I'm losing my mind here. What's that phrase? Like, do you? I don't know. I forget it. It's gone in my head. Yeah. Or do the means benefit the end, or something like that?
Do the ends justify the means?
Thank you.
No worries.
Yeah. Oh man. I'm gonna take a sip of water.
We're all having one of those days. It's fine. I don't remember what my own name is. I'm Tyler now.
No, you're not. Do people call you that?
Do people call me Taylor is the real question.
Oh dear. I'm sorry.
It's probably on a 2-to-1
really?
ratio. People call me Tyler to Taylor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
I have the same thing with my name. People call me Kemi or Kelly or.
I can see you getting that. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Don't call me Trevor, and I think we'll be fine.
Okay, sounds good. I will not do that.
All right, perfect. But you talked a little bit about community a little bit earlier, and I kind of have to ask the question now: what does community mean to you?
Community means a lot of things to me. So community is like, there's the physical presence, the physical space of community, but then there's the people, and really is the people that make the community. So we can talk about a larger Peterborough community. We can also talk about different neighborhood communities. So I live in the heart of downtown Peterborough, and that is in and of itself is a community, right? So that's where you can walk down the street and you see your neighbor, say hello to them. The business owners that are nearby you know who you are, people who look out for you, and people who sort of rally you in times of need, but are also there to celebrate with you in good times and bad. But also people that will like check you, where somebody sees that you're doing something and they might say, hey, I don't think that's cool. Why don't we have a conversation about it so I can get to know you better and you can understand my ways better. But yeah, that to me is a community, a group of people that live either in close proximity to each other or know each other and are there for each other.
Yeah, and I know, especially if we're referring to Town Ward as a community, one of the segments of that community is the city's kind of low-income population, those who are dealing with poverty. And there's a lot of commentary going around right now, and there has been for a while, about their place in Town Ward, especially because there's perception that from some people that the downtown is gentrifying, a lot of redevelopment's happening, and they're taking kind of low income housing and building it up and repairing it, but then they're not making it low income, and that's pushing people away from the downtown. So do these people have a place downtown to call home? And if not, then should there be a place for them, and what should we be doing?
I think there should be a place in the community. I feel like people should be able to choose where they live. Or where they want to live. So if somebody who is lower income wants to live downtown, I feel like they should have a place there that is available to them. I'm a proponent of mixed housing. So say you have a residential building, I believe that some of the spaces there should be for lower income people, middle income people, and higher income people as well. Okay. I think that's something that we could do if we were talking to developers who are looking to build residential units, providing them incentives. And I know the city already has some incentives in place to have mixed use residential spaces. But I definitely think people with lower income should be downtown, but primarily should have a choice of where they want to live and be able to afford those places.
And I know the downtown is a popular spot too, because there's a lot of services that are downtown.
Yeah.
I mean, there is the social services building, but then you have other things like Forecast, Parn, just as some examples.
And transit, like
transit's
hub
huge.
Is right there.
Yeah. I mean, from the downtown, you can get all over town.
Yeah. That's part of the reason I live downtown, because I don't have a car.
Oh, really?
No, yeah. I'm either walking, cycling, or taking transit.
See, I'm jealous. Because of the journalist lifestyle, quote unquote, I can be kind of anywhere at any time. So, but if I could bike to work, I absolutely would.
You know, I considered cycling here, and I was going to, but I ended up. I'm heading out of town tomorrow for a wedding, so I did rent a car.
Okay.
But yeah, it would have been like a 10-minute bike ride for me, and it would have been great.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about transportation a little bit later, probably in the second half. But maybe we should be talking about cycling infrastructure, because it's something that the city wants to fill in. There's there's some pretty great sections of bike infrastructure in the city, and then there's some pretty noticeable gaps as well.
Yes.
So how do we go about filling those? Yeah. Or do we?
Well, I think we should. I mean, and I would like to commend the city on this. I do think that they have taken great strides towards increasing our cycling infrastructure. And most recently on George and Water Street, they've expanded the cycling lanes there. So I'm really glad to see that. But yes, as you said, there are gaps. And I do think it is important to fill them in. But everything that the city does costs money, right? And that money is, the way we get that is from taxes. So, I have people telling me that, they see their tax bills increasing year by year. And part of that is because of inflation, but also part of that is city increasing the amount of taxes that people pay. So we have to make sure that we are careful with people's money and that we spend it wisely. But this is where having a plan comes in place. If we have a transportation plan, which I know we do, to include cycling lanes within that transportation plan and make sure that the growth of those lanes is steady but keeps happening until really the whole city is connected through bike lanes.
Yeah, I know. Just talking about taxes, I mean, before you sit in a city council meeting and before you sit in a budget committee meeting, it's so easy to be like, oh, my taxes are going up and going up, and I don't understand why, and I'm so frustrated. And certainly the frustration is real. I understand that.
Yeah.
But then when you take a look at, here's the list of things the city wants to afford. Yeah. Here's how much it actually can afford. And there are some pretty key projects. It's things like, basic road repairs, because there's a lot of people that complain about the city's roads. I mean, you could have a new replacement for the Memorial Center, which could draw thousands of people into the community, and that could cost $72 million apparently.
Yep.
So it's always a struggle to, balance the need of affordability for people in your community versus the fact that there's a lot of things that need to get paid for.
Right. Yeah. So when I'm at the door and people are talking to me about their taxes, I say, I do hear what they're saying, but the taxes pay for services, just like you said. And it's not just the big capital projects like buildings and roads, but it's also like garbage pickup, and it pays for city staff. And, without the staff, things won't get done. So I think you're right. If people do get a better understanding of what it is that the budget looks like and where things are being allocated, it makes sense. And for me, I'm happy to pay my taxes in order to receive the services that I get.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so I think we've talked for a little bit now. We're going to take a short break.
Okay.
And then we're going to dive back into it and talk about some Peterborough issues.
Sounds good.
All right, excellent. Looking forward to it. There we go. Can't forget to do that because then I have to manually sync up the audio and it's the worst.
Okay.
Right. So now we're back on the Peterpodcast, and let's talk about a couple of issues that people care about.
Okay.
I guess it's kind of up to you, because you've been knocking on the doors, whether or not people have been talking about some of these things at the door with you. But maybe let's talk about transportation first of all.
Okay.
And what are your thoughts on improving transportation in Peterborough, and especially in regards to the Parkway?
The Parkway. I knew that was going to come up. So transportation is an issue. It's an issue for all cities. It's not Peterborough specific. The main thing that I've actually been hearing at the door around transportation is just the state of the roads. And that is something that I do recognize that does need to improve, particularly in Town Ward. Some of the roads, like I'm thinking Simcoe and Charlotte, are quite in a state of disrepair. That being said, I also recognize that it's quite expensive to repave a road. And so sometimes potholes are just going to have to do until the funds are there to be able to repave it. In terms of the Parkway, I've had a couple of people ask me about it at the door. And as it stands now, I'm not for the Parkway. And that's for a number of reasons. One of them is the bridge that goes over Jackson Park, which I understand, I believe that has been taken out of the request, but I don't know what else has been put in. If they've taken it out, then what else have they put in to replace that? That I'm not sure.
Yeah, from my understanding right now, it's just it's a 2-lane road right up to Jackson Park, and then I guess it just
ends.
And then it continues on the other side of Jackson's Park.
Gotcha.
And then the plan is to widen nearby roads to get traffic flowing around the park instead.
Okay. The Parkway, this issue has been going on for 72 years, which is a really long time.
It's a pretty long time for something to be on the books, isn't it?
And the longer it takes, the more expensive it gets. And quite frankly, I'm not sure if it's the only solution that we have. I would like to see the city explore other options. If the Parkway were to not happen, what else can we do to alleviate transit?
Well, what are some options then for not doing the Parkway? Because, we need to move people around Peterborough somehow.
That's right. I'm not a transportation expert. So I would love to sit down with some city planners and have a conversation about that. I do know that there has been an idea of, like you said, widening other roads to make traffic flow there faster. There's an idea of a ring road around Peterborough, which I believe somewhat exists already, but maybe formalizing that. But I would need to do a little bit more research to figure that out. But I do believe that there are some street calming measures that can be put into place for those residential roads that I know that's where people's main concerns are. That people are just flying by too quickly. I was reading a study recently that said if you were to decrease from 50 to 30, that significantly reduces, the speed limit. It significantly reduces the amount of accidents that could happen and increases safety. So there's an option. I don't know if that's the single answer for all of it, but it's one example of what can be done.
Yeah, and there are a number of reports that are out right now, or studies, which are looking at various different measures from transit to active transportation to better syncing up the city's traffic lights.
Yes,
So there are a couple of things kind of in the works right now, but what that will culminate to is yet to be seen. And if elected, you might have to vote on what the future of the parkway is.
Yeah, definitely. And if I were so lucky to be elected, I would do my research and ask the questions that I would need to ask, be in touch with the residents and see what they want as well, and then eventually make an informed decision on that.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're right about one thing for sure, and that's that there's a lot of traffic on residential roads that needs to get off of it soon. I mean, just sit at Park Hill and watch all the cars turn left onto Fairbarn.
Oh my gosh,
Or be on Clonsilla and look at Goodfellow, or the route I used to get to work, which is High Street. That usually has way more traffic on it than it was ever designed for. I mean, that street doesn't even have sidewalks throughout most of it.
Yeah.
So.
And that's another thing that really bothers me. Streets without sidewalks. I don't get it. I really don't get it.
From my understanding, for a while, it was a cost-saving measure on the city. But I think there's a lot of people that think that's short-sighted now. Yes.
Oh, definitely. And it's for many reasons. Like, I mean, safety. You have people, where was I the other day? I was in one of the new areas of Town Ward, and I was canvassing, and the streets didn't have sidewalks. So I was walking on the road, and there's cars going by me. So I was concerned for my safety and the safety of my volunteers. And I was like, streets need sidewalks. And I'm a pretty able-bodied person and pretty healthy. But I was thinking, if I was in a walker, if I was in a wheelchair, if I was a mom, pushing my baby around in a stroller, this would be pretty dangerous and pretty scary.
Yeah.
So for accessibility reasons alone, every street, I believe, should have at least one sidewalk. Preferably sidewalks on both sides.
Yeah, preferably.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the rules around that have changed. That I think there needs to be at least one sidewalk. Don't quote me on that. Actually, quote city planners on that, not me.
Okay.
But I think the rules have changed since then, so that there needs to be at least one sidewalk.
That's good.
But yeah, let's move on from transportation and talk PDI.
Okay.
Now, the PDI sale is kind of in a zone where I'm not sure there's much that the city could do unless
I don't think so.
The Ontario Energy Board says no to the deal.
Yeah.
But with that said, there is that deal for $105 million, which will equal out to about $55 million for the city in revenue. What are your thoughts on the PDI sale?
Yeah. Well, as you mentioned, the sale is sort of in this weird situation now where it's been sold by the city and we're just waiting to hear back whether or not it will officially be sold. So right now what I'd like to focus on is what are we going to do with that money, that revenue that we get. I understand that some of it, there have been discussions about putting some of it towards capital plans, putting some of it in reserves. I was talking to a resident yesterday, and she was thinking, well, why don't we put it towards some things that the cap and trade used to fund, some green projects in the city, and put it towards that. So that's an idea.
Because I forget how much from cap and trade we got annually, but we did get an annual payment from the province for cap and trade.
Yeah.
Which I guess we'll no longer be getting because that doesn't exist.
Yeah, exactly. So all that to say is that there's lots of ideas out there, but I do think that's important that we do use the funds that we get from the sale to benefit the city. And, if we can do so in an environmental way, that would be excellent. I do think it's a good idea to have a little bit of a reserve. I know the city already does, but also investing it and making sure that money grows. It's not very often that a city gets such a huge influx of cash, so it'd be great to see that it's spent carefully, but also invested so that it can continue to provide dividends for the city.
Yeah, and just so people are aware of where you stood at the time, but when it was before council, which camp were you on? Were you on pro or sale or anti-sale?
I was not in favor of the sale of the Parkway. Of the PDI.
That's okay. I got them confused.
Yeah, they both start with P.
Both of them inspire a lot of anger.
They do. Well, people are very passionate about these the two topics. But no, I was not in favor of the sale of PDI, and I went to a couple council meetings and spoke at them. One of them was at Market Hall, just because it was such a large meeting, and for a number of reasons. I understand that the city was. Or PDI was being told that it was going to need to have to repair its poles and lines for distribution by the province. But I think that's something that, they probably knew was going to happen for a couple of years. So as a business, you have to make repairs that are costly, but you make a plan for it and you work towards it. And PDI was making a profit. So why sell something to a corporation that is privately owned when we can keep it in the hands of the people of the city?
Well, my response to that would be the arguments that were from the people who were in favor of the sale, which was that PDI might be profitable now, but that is likely to change in the future. And also, energy consolidation is a thing that the province was aiming towards at the time. They were aiming to dramatically reduce the number of hydro utilities in the province, and they had a deal where they looked at PDI and said, "Here's the value of it now, and we can be getting a much more valuable product out of it." If we sell it to Hydro One. That's the argument from the people who were in favor of the sale.
Yeah, and I've heard those.
So,
yeah.
What are...
But at the end of the day, Hydro One is a corporation, and they are privately owned, and at the end of the day, they want to make money. And so I know that there's going to be a freeze on hikes for, I believe it's 10 years.
Yep.
And I do know that they are regulated, but I do feel that it's always better when a city can own its own or really own any of its services that it provides, and keeps it in the hand of the people. I'm always a strong component for that when and where possible.
And I ask about the PDI sale because it's something that people care about. I've heard from some people that depending on how their councillors or candidates answer on that question, they may or may not vote for them.
Yeah.
But I also pose it because it's entirely possible that in the future the question could pop up again with a different utility. I mean, Peterborough Utilities itself was not for sale, just PDI, which is one component of that. So we still have PUC, we still have Riverview Zoo. But it's entirely possible that some other element of the city services could be negotiated as being up for sale at some point. So, I just want to know where you stand on that.
Well, I mean, like I said, I always work towards keeping things public and in the hands of the people of the city. That being said, I can't comment on possible future sales that may come up. So if and when they come up, I'll address it at that time.
Okay. The last thing I kind of want to talk about was housing. And we touched on it when we were talking about town ward. But namely in the fact of that, we are dealing with a bit of a housing crisis right now.
Yeah. More than a bit of it, like a
we're dealing with
crisis.
And it doesn't really look like it's going to slow down anytime soon. Housing prices are through the roof right now. Our rental vacancy rate is low, 1%.
1%, yeah.
What can we be doing to alleviate this housing crunch that we're dealing with?
Yeah. So I think one good thing the city has done is pass, I believe it was a bylaw that the secondary suites could come into effect. So hopefully that'll alleviate some of the pressure. And I believe I mentioned this earlier, talking about mixed use residential spaces and providing incentives for developers who are looking to build here into building those spaces. I think densification is good, and that's something that we have been mandated to look at. And council has, I believe, agreed to a 33% hike in densification in downtown. So that's something that we can work towards as well. But you're right, it is a growing concern. But it's not just, and the city does have a part to play, but I also believe we need to talk to the province as well as the federal government as well, because it is their responsibility. And I know the federal government has released a housing plan, I forget what they called it, but looking into that and see how actually that money from that can be transferred to the cities across Canada and provide some alleviation to cities. And in the interim, we need to continue to provide supports for shelters such as Cameron House. We need to build Brock Mission, and shelters like the Warming Room to provide overnight shelter for folks who are experiencing homelessness.
What are your thoughts on subdivision development?
Well, you know what? I'm not, as much as I would love to see everyone, stay in the core of downtown and sort of be the heart of the city, I do understand that subdivisions are built and need to be built. I just believe that they need to be done carefully and with thought, and making sure that those subdivisions are not just bedrooms, right?
Mm-hmm.
They need to have grocery stores there. They need to have good transportation there. They need to have good schools there, or access to schools there. I mentioned roads already, but also, sewage and water and all that kind of stuff. So you can't just throw a subdivision somewhere and then it's one thing to build a subdivision, but what are the costs of the homes there going to be?
Mm-hmm.
If they're going for $700,000, the average Peterborough person is not going to be able to afford that. So if essentially you're building homes for people in Toronto who are moving to Peterborough, so which is great. I'm glad to see that people are relocating to Peterborough, but we also need to address the needs of the people and the residents that already live here.
Yeah, and I know right now, with all this stuff going on, because we do have a couple subdivisions under development right now. One that was, its draft plan was just approved the other day at council. Ashborough Village, near the lift locks. We've also got the Lily Lake Road subdivision, which is expected to bring a large number of houses into the area. And like you said, there's a lot of effort going on to intensify key areas. I know there's a report right now in front of council about some of those areas that could be intensified, not just the downtown, but areas like Chemong as well. But right now what we're looking at is, I've talked to a lot of people about the 407 extension.
Yes.
Because when that comes, there's expected to be a wave of people who are going to want to move here. And it begs the question of whether or not we're going to be ready for when those people do come here, because all these people are going to want to have houses and jobs, and I'm not so sure that we're going to be ready for that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you raise a good point. In the 407, I feel like we're already seeing the effects of that, particularly in the housing market with the prices of homes going up. I believe that's as a result of people anticipating that road being built. And I do believe that that's part of the responsibility of the city to look after that. And we have a great planning division in the city hall, so we need to work with them to figure out how we are going to be able to address the needs of all these folks that are moving to Peterborough.
All right. Well, I think we're just about to run out of time, so I'll leave it to you. Is there anything else that you want to add before we wrap up?
Well, just wanted to say thank you to you, Taylor. Not Tyler, for having me on. And to folks who are watching, thanks so much for watching. Please visit my website, kemiakapo.ca, for more information. And I look forward to talking to each and every one of you when I go knocking on doors. And don't forget to vote on October 22nd.
Thank you, Kemi, for being on the show. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, and to everybody else, we'll see you again soon.
Bye.